Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you. I'm sorry I'm going to be talking at you just for a bit. We promise we'll hopefully even get to hear some of your voices if you give us a good question later on. But it's really such an honor to be here with all of you. I'm so excited about our session today. And I'm super excited really for a conversation with someone who I think is incredibly special, and that's Don Roy King. And so first, let me go over some logistics with everyone. First of all, I have muted you all, so except for Don and myself for the moment. And if you have a question, go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, and just directly put that in your chat box down below. If you're gonna go down below, you'll see chat. In that, direct it to Lana Smith. And if you could, send it to Lana. And I'm going to now unmute her. Say hello, Lana.
Hello, Lana.
Very well said. And you can wave so everyone sees your box a little bit. Hopefully it'll go up towards your top. Very nice. With that being said, let me kind of set the stage for all of you. Because I think a very good question is, why would a rabbi be interviewing an award-winning director? Well, why not? If you think about it, I'm an American Jew. We're American Jews, a lot of us. There's Christian Jews and Muslim Jews and Buddhist Jews. But a big part of that is the American part of that. And that is why we view the arts as being so very important. Our culture, which I think we should all be very concerned with right now, is hugely impacted by the entertainment industry, from television and film to stage, and now even more so in the internet. So enough of that. Like so many of you, so many of us in the world have been impacted by Saturday Night Live. For 45 years, Saturday Night Live has been a part of the culture of America and so many of our lives. I'm sure each of you can pick moments of time where you remember learning how to do that impression. Dan Aykroyd's Richard Nixon was very important. Come on, you could all do it with me. I'm not a crook, right? I mean, we all learned that. You should know that Dana Carvey's ability to do, I think, a lot of characters, but for me, it was church lady. It was very important because when I was in rabbinic school, we would do what's called a bake cafe, where we would raise money for different organizations, and we would have the cantors would sing, and the rabbis, some of them would sing. And of course, no surprise to you, I was one of the two guys that would do the comedy mishigas, the craziness, and I was church lady on 2 occasions. So for me, this was very important. Saturday Night Live is important, and I'll be honest with you, it has always been taped to my VCR when we had such things, to whatever other Michigas machines that we have that tapes all of this. Every Saturday, I've always taped Saturday Night Live. It's an important part of my family's life and an important part of my life. And honestly, it has also gone through its ups and downs. We've all seen the amazing casts and not as amazing casts. But SNL, in the course of the last really 20 years, I think has gone through a resurgence. Don Roy King took over as director in 2006, and he was part, I think, of the resurgence of Saturday Night Live. So the questions we're going to have is, what changed on Saturday Night Live that gave it this resurgence, if you will? How did Don Roy King taking over as director impact on that change, even though he may say it didn't? In fact, what does Don Roy King really do, for crying out loud? Boy, Don, do we have questions for you. But first, it is my great honor to introduce you. Don Roy King has directed more live network television than anyone in the history of the medium. That work has earned him 9 Primetime Emmys and 13 nominations. He has also been nominated for 14 DGA awards and won 6 times, including the last 4 consecutive years. Mr. King has won 2 other Emmys for his work, one for directing one of the great talk shows of all time, according to my mother, and I would never ever disagree with her publicly, the Mike Douglas Show, and one for heading the design team that revamped the graphic look of CBS News. In addition, Mr. King is the creative director for Broadway Worldwide, a venture that brings theatrical events to theaters and international television. The company has produced 4 major productions, all directed by Mr. King. The 2010 Tony-winning musical Memphis, which earned an Emmy for technical direction, Smokey Joe's Cafe, the Stephen Sondheim review, putting it together with Carol Burnett, and the musical Jekyll and Hyde. In addition, he directed the screen version of Broadway's Romeo and Juliet starring Orlando Bloom. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome Don Roy King, director of Saturday Night Live.
Well, thank you.
Clapping, Don.
That was impressive. I not so much for the credits, but for how well it was performed.
Aww.
But you shouldn't upstage the guy that has to give a speech now.
I'm just learning, Don.
I was impressed, and even threw in an impression there. And the fact is that I direct some very talented people, and I am working on a comedy show. But unlike those writers and those cast members and the rabbi, I am not a performer. So if any of you tuned in to hear comedy stand up or sit down, I might disappoint you. It's my job to take the material that those brilliant people envision and bring it to life, to stage it, to shoot the cameras, and to keep it on the air live, and to do it justice. That's really all I do. And if you came to hear some behind the scenes, salacious, Belushi-esque stories of what happens behind the scenes of Saturday Night Live, I might disappoint you there too, because in my 14 years, I have yet to go to an after party. In fact, I heard more salacious rumors when I was directing Kids Are People Too on ABC. And if you were hoping that I had some perspective on how Saturday Night Live has affected our cultural world, or maybe even our political world, I might disappoint you there too, because I don't even know what our ratings are. And I take the material that's given and try my best to do it justice. And if any of you came to hear some boxing stories because you thought it was the other Don King, I really apologize.
I noticed that the stress on the Royal. Now, the Roy, I can understand why though, Don.
That's exactly right. That's the only reason I added that to my name. It's been a problem for me ever since he got out of jail in 1969. Of course, he's kind of retired now, so that joke doesn't even play when I talk to college kids.
No, it's yeah. You have to have a certain generation or two to understand it now.
My guess is you guys know who he is, so I got away with it.
We do. Oliver probably doesn't, but we do.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I'll tell you later, Oliver. And just coincidentally, I was a pretty active amateur boxer for in my 30s for about 10 years. So I've got some boxing stories too, if you guys are desperate for one. But what I would like to talk about is just a remarkable show. And Dana, as you suggested, it's been around making its mark for 45 years. And it is remarkable that it is still on the air, remarkable that any show, certainly any entertainment show would last that long. And the reason is just two words, Lorne Michaels. I have never worked for anyone who is that driven and that brilliant and that talented, and it is his drive and his insistence that it be the best it can be every single week that keeps it alive. A couple of years ago, he said, if this show becomes a nostalgia show that people watch because they say, oh, we used to watch that in college, and let's see if they have any of those old characters. If it becomes a nostalgia show, it's over. He refuses to make it that. And therefore, every week, his stomach is in a knot. He insists to be as good as it can be, no matter what the material. And every week, he is demanding excellence, and I have great admiration for that. He is not a nice man. He's not friendly. He's not easy to talk to. He's not very communicative, but driven in a way that insists on excellence, and that's why that show is still on the air. He surrounds himself with the best people to what they do, the best writers and cast, of course, but also the best scenic designers and hair and makeup people and wardrobe people and special effects people, the best music coordinators, the best band. and I won't necessarily say the best director, but he keeps people around who are driven to follow his vision and to bring that vision to life. And as a result, we do a show that if you had asked me 14 years ago, can it even be done this way? I would have said, absolutely not. You tell me it happens all in 4 days? You tell me that this gigantic mounting of a variety show with 14 one-act plays from scratch, and all of that scenery and all of those props and the details that go into every one of those little one-act plays comes to life in 4 days? You're telling me that there are changes in how it happens? I said it's impossible to do, but we do it, and it is a remarkable machine. We do nothing at all until Monday. We have a short half-hour meeting with the host, and if it's a new host who's never done it before, that meeting is sort of designed to scare the host. I think we sit in a big room, and yes.
How is the host determined? And the music?
I have no idea. I mean, there's a talent department that determines hosts and music guests, and is in a search for new cast members. And I assume that they make suggestions on a weekly basis to Lorne. He makes the decisions, and he pairs that host with the musical guest. Sometimes it's clear that it's a movie star who has a movie coming out, or it's an NBC sitcom where somebody is broken out, but it might be a rapper that no one has heard of or no one knows has any acting skills. It might be a politician. It might be an athlete. It might be certainly a movie star or a television star. But I get the list maybe 2 weeks ahead of time and say, oh, he's hosting? Man.
What was the biggest, was there a biggest surprise of anyone that's hosted that was like, wow, I can't believe that person's hosting?
Yes. Here's a story about my very first year. The 5th show we did was hosted by Alec Baldwin, who has done it more than anyone else. And for a good reason. He's great at it. And he can do impressions. He does a little singing. He helps them write. He's just versatile and so comfortable and smooth in what is a monumental mountain to climb for a host. And it was my 5th show, and by far my best show at that time. And when the show ended, people said, "Whoa, man, that's when you should submit for an Emmy, Don. That was a smooth show. He was terrific." Well, there was a kind of a cloud over the entire operation regarding the next week's show. And I didn't know enough about it to understand, but I sensed that people were thinking this is going to be such a downer after what we just had with Alec Baldwin. The host and the musical guest, the same guy, his name is Chris Bridges, also known as the rapper Ludacris. Now, number one, no one knew that he had any acting talent or experience. He certainly had no comedy background and no sketch comedy background. He was a 23-year-old kid who had already been in this national argument with Oprah about the nature of his lyrics. And we thought, oh man, the crew and staff thought after this great week with Alec Baldwin, we're going to have to suffer through this tough week with a kid who might come in with an entourage and a chip on his shoulder. Well, the Monday meeting, which is what I was describing before, just a short meeting where the writers throw out one idea each. He was quiet, nodded a couple of times, and didn't ask any questions. Tuesday, the host does nothing at all. Wednesday, we have what's a read through, where for the first time, 40 scripts have been written. There are 40 sketches on my desk, and we just sit around a big table with all of the cast, and Lauren and I sit up here with the host, and the rest of the staff and crew sits around the room to provide sort of a pseudo audience. And we read through as many as 40, 45 sketches. It takes hours to do. We don't do it all script in hand. And Chris did not bring much to that read through. I mean, he could read fine, and no characters or nothing other than just reading his lines. Thursday, we rehearsed the guest band, and he did his 2 songs. They were relatively tame and tasteful, and he knows how to do that. That went fine. But then we rehearsed the simple sketches first on Thursday, because the set designers and the prop people don't even know what we're mounting until just the night before, after Lauren picks. Wednesday night is when we find out what we're actually going to mount. And we find out what films are going to be shot too, with the digital shorts and the commercial parodies and stuff. That all happens Wednesday night. So starting Wednesday night, the set designers are starting from scratch. At any rate, by Thursday after the band rehearsal, we have nothing to play with other than rehearsal blocks and just some studio furniture. And the first, and I rehearse the sketches on the floor with the actors and block them, and then go in and do it again with the cameras. We get each sketch gets about an hour's work. But we did that first sketch with Ludacris, and it was a talk show where his character appeared late in the sketch, and the rest of the cast was sort of circled around him in this semicircle. And I give him a cue to start. The cue cards weren't ready, so we were just using just script in hand. And immediately Kenan Thompson jumps off the wall with this amazing character, and the whole crew's laughing, and a typical start to a SNL rehearsal. And then it moved over to Kate and then Cecily Strong, and they both had these ridiculous characters that already had this sketch soaring. Well, I look over at Chris Bridges, I look over at Ludacris, and he's sitting there with a script, and it's shaking like this. And I thought, oh my God, we're in trouble. This kid is on something. Well, it finally circled around to his first line, and that deep baritone voice of his came out with a little quiver in it. And I thought, wait a minute, he's not on something. He's nervous. Oh, well, who wouldn't be nervous? You're a 23-year-old kid. You're sitting there with the best sketch actors in the world, and you got to come up with a line reading, and he was nervous with a little quiver in his voice. Well, I suddenly felt so sorry for him, and I thought, oh, man, I got to do what I can to help. Well, I didn't have to help because he was so driven to make this work. He would be usually we bring the host out last in any given rehearsal. Just so because the host is usually involved in every one, give him as much time as he can to read a script or sit in his dressing room. He was the first one on set. Every single sketch we did, he had written down questions. Can I do an accent here? Or where are the cue cards going to be? And the only attitude he showed is, I want to make this work. And he tried so hard. Well, by the time Saturday came around, we'd do a dress rehearsal at 8:00. With as much as 20 minutes more material than we actually need. But what we do a full-scale rehearsal, everything is all the props, all the scenery, all the tapes, all the music, all the graphics, and it's not a very forgiving system to a late starter. So he was struggling a little bit. He had trouble straight through dress rehearsal. Well, I said, well, I'm the director. Maybe I can help. And I jumped up out of the control room and I ran out to stop him as he came out of the studio. And I said, hey, Chris, I got to tell you something. I said, yeah, I've only done 5 of these, but man, you have come so far in 3 days. I am so impressed. And he looked up and down the hall to see if anybody was around. And he kind of grabbed me by the lapels and he sort of pushed me against the wall. And he said, thank you so much for telling me that, man. Said, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. This is so hard. So, but okay, hearing that from the director, that helps me. And thank you. Well, we turn it around fast and make edits on the fly, and things get rewritten. But we go on. That dress rehearsal ends about 10, but we go on at 11:30 for the air show, the live show, the one that counts. And he was terrific. He was so. He was comfortable and smooth, and not everything worked, but not everything works in the Alec Baldwin show either. And he did a couple of things that were really special. He did a thing with Daryl Hammond near the end of the show, maybe the last sketch, 2 old guys sitting on a bench, and this character was just a great old guy. They were talking about the young kids, and it was bittersweet in a lovely way. Mm-hmm. I was so happy for him. And I jumped up and I ran into his dressing room. And sure enough, now it was filled with all his buddies. And but he saw me come in. He pushed his way through his friends. He came over and shook my hand. He said, "Hey, thanks so much for talking to me between shows." I said, "Yeah, you don't have to thank me, man. You proved me right. That was terrific." And he got quiet again. And he said, "Hey, go tell my mom that, will you?" His mother was standing the other side of the dressing room, kind of a church lady type, just standing there, taking it all in. And I went up, I said, "Hey, your son did great." And she said, "Well, thank you so much. But you tell me when he doesn't do well, too." So it was just a hardcore rapper, just wanted to make his mom proud.
Man, that's terrific. Wow, wow.
Yeah.
So in terms of that week that you were describing, though, I mean, it seems like it begins kind of mellow and then it gets super, really very intense. So there's literally like a day before where they're going to be building some of the more intricate sets. And so you start with potentially 40 skits, break them down to what, 10 or so, right?
10 or so, right.
And how do you test that out? The ones that work or don't work?
Well, again, that's a Lorne Michaels decision. He listens to those sketches and just seems to grasp right away which ones will work, which ones are the right combination, which ones have a little bit of topicality to it, a little bit of politics to it, so a little bit of weirdness to it, something that will work later in the show. And he makes the decisions. That read through starts at about 3 in the afternoon and ends about 8. And by 9 o'clock, we go into his office and we'll look up and see what he's picked. There'll be he'll ask us some questions about what we think, which one would we pick of these 3, that kind of thing. The host has some input that what he or she prefers, but it's really Lorne's decision. And then we, again, with as much as 40 minutes more than we actually need, and we rehearse it all. But after he makes those decisions Wednesday night, I take those selected scripts into a different room, and for the first time, all of those special people, hair and makeup and wardrobe and set design, special effects, they find out what we are gonna, and they start to go shop and build sets and design costumes Wednesday night. And then by Saturday, I'll walk in and the whole place has been transformed to all of these little remarkably detailed sketches and costumes, and the best people at what they do are there, and it makes it a joy to see that stuff come to life so quickly. Of course,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Of course, the scripts change significantly. Between the first read through and the first rehearsal, changes are made. Between that first rehearsal and the run through on Saturday, more changes are made. Between the run through and dress rehearsal, changes are made. Between the dress rehearsal and air, changes are made. And so it is a living organism straight through and sometimes during the live show on Saturday.
Wow. Are there times where they'll literally after the rehearsal say that just doesn't work? We can't do that one? Does that ever happen?
Between dress rehearsal and air, because we're 40 minutes long, Lorne will often throw out as many as 4 sketches and forget those 4. But all of the rest, I'll get my script back at 11 o'clock and there'll be 100 Post-its in it. And I'll turn the page to this Post-it. And there are new jokes written in here. I'll turn the page, the whole page is crossed out. And I'll turn the page, I'll say, wait a minute, this is a different ending. How are we going to do this? And so we fly at 11:30. All of the detailed work on blocking it shot for shot. And every cameraman knows which shot number he has and whether there's a 2-shot or whether it's a pan from one to another. He has all of that, but then I'm changing it on the fly between 11 and 11:30.
Wow. So
now at 11:30, I often, during that meeting, I'm usually cursing Lorne under my breath for having put us through this and thinking, oh my, this can't be done, or I can't get the camera to that person for that line. And it is a nightmare experience. But inevitably at 1 o'clock, I say, you know something, he was right. That sketch was better when he moved it after Weekend Update, and it was better with that new ending. And that script, that joke, that was the biggest laugh in the whole sketch. That new joke that we added during the changeover. And that's part of his brilliance. He just has a sense of what works. And then when he hears it in front of a live audience, he knows where it should go and how it should change. And it's because of him that the show's still on the air.
I can imagine, absolutely. In terms of like all the different personalities as director that you have to deal with, how do you balance that out? And then I think about over the years that you've been there, now we're having young, wonderful actors coming to Saturday Night Live that are very young. So we're talking about different generations you're actually working with. I mean,
Yes.
Thompson's been there probably longer than almost, I think, any actor's ever been on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
So, yeah.
At first, I thought, boy, it's a good thing I'm a little older. I'll be able to deal with all the ego issues that not only among cast members who have done it and know how to do it, and I don't, and they don't want to rehearse it again, but more importantly, I thought I'm be dealing with hosts every week, and these hosts are iconic figures in whatever world they're in. They're coming here as kind of fish out of water, but they're big time and famous and rich, and they want to be treated that way. And they're expecting that kind of treatment. I thought, well, I'll be able to deal with some of that. But the fact is that it is such a cool place to be, and the speed is so fast. The demands are so intense that there's very little of that. There's very few ego problems, cast or hosts. And like Ludacris, they think, oh man, I don't want to make a fool of myself. So here, take my hand and walk me through this. And that's probably the most challenging and the most rewarding part of my job, is to take those hosts through that process and see how they deal with that pressure and see how they develop that intense set of skills it takes to host a Saturday Night Live. I love that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Was there one host that you directed that just blew you away, that you were so excited, like your inner child got giddy about? Someone that you really got excited about?
I think the one that affected me the most was Paul McCartney. And although he hasn't hosted, but he's done a guest appearance on 3 or 4 shows, and he did a major musical number in the 40th anniversary show, and
which was wonderful, by the way.
Thank you. It was. I'm very proud of that. And
I think it's one of the best things I've ever seen that SNL's ever done, quite frankly.
It was quite a steep mountain to climb, right up to last second, but it was worth climbing, and it was fun climbing it. And when I first took over, they said, the show is a well-oiled machine, and you'll pick up the machinery part very quickly. Just dread it when you hear we're going to do a special, because people come back and they forget how it works, and they want to talk about old times, and they don't want to do the work, and the schedule is screwed up, and nobody knows exactly what to do because different people are doing graphics. It'll be a nightmare. Well, as soon as they said 40th anniversary show, I thought, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. It was not. There were some major challenges to it on several levels, but it was a show I'm proud of. Yeah.
Wow. What would be the hardest show that you've ever had to direct for Saturday Night Live, Don?
That one.
That one really, I would think it would be.
Yeah, it was.
You definitely had more egos, though, right? You had a lot more egos at that point to deal with than you normally would.
Yes, but even they knew that it takes a certain amount of concentration and work ethic, and we have to get this done, and because of Lorne, I think there is a sense of we're here to fulfill his vision. Now, I mentioned that the best people at what they do are there, and as a result, there are ego friction. The lighting designer is furious that the set designer brought in a shiny wallpaper or something, and they'll scream at each other about it. I can't like that. Everything, so many reflections. But if the senior designer can say, well, that's what Lorne wants, that shuts it down. Yeah. Those ego issues get crushed, and I think he does that purposefully to some degree. because we're all there to not fulfill our own ego visions, but to fulfill his, and do it the best we can. And so that's one of the reasons it's still around, and then one of the reasons it still works, I think.
So is the energy then, based on what you're saying, Don, the energy around Saturday Night Live that week of preparation, is it really a business energy, or is it really kind of a family energy, or a combo?
I'd say it's a combo, not so much family as business and the creative excitement. It's a work ethic of, we have to do this, we have to rehearse that, we have to figure out how this special effect will look and be visualized. But it's also, hey, we're here to make people laugh and clap, and that is so cool. And I became a television director because I wanted to be in entertainment. I wanted to be a storyteller. And for 21 years, I directed morning television, Good Morning America and CBS This Morning, and it was challenging, and it was rewarding on many levels, but it wasn't really show business. It was designed to make people tell people whether to take an umbrella to work in the morning, and hey, your sports team won last night, and here's a cooking demo, and that was fascinating work, but it wasn't show business. And then out of nowhere, I got this opportunity to be involved intimately in the process of storytelling and making people laugh and think and do some healing too, especially the last couple of years. And that feels good and feels important, and by far the best job I've ever had.
And I would reflect to you, Don, that it really has been therapeutic, especially during difficult times. And to be able to watch Saturday Night Live make fun of someone, let's just say, I'm not going to mention anyone by name, but let's say an orange Cheeto type of person, just to know that Saturday Night Live is going to have our back, and is going to let us know that we're not living in this crazy world, this Twilight Zone world, that they're actually, there's a sense of reality. And I think SNL does that, believe it or not, by reminding to laugh also is very important and therapeutic.
And it's healing. And Lauren has done some healing in ways that also I found touching and important, and things we did that weren't designed to get laughs, but just to say to the world, hey, then things are okay. After the elementary school shooting, we had kids sing a Christmas carol to open the show. After the massacre in Las Vegas, the band that was on stage at the time opened the show with "We Won't Back Down." And after the elections, Kate McKinnon as Hillary Clinton sang "Hallelujah," and I found that so important and moving. And again, that's Lorne Michaels.
Yeah, but very well directed, my friend. Very well directed. So I have so a couple questions here that maybe I think kind of fun.
Okay.
Daniel asks, from the not ready for primetime players, which is the original title of the cast members.
Yes.
Who's your favorite to have ever worked with? And he's asking, not that you want to answer, but who was your least favorite to work with?
Well. A lot of people think that the very first cast for me, not the first cast for the show, but for me in 2006 was one of the best ever. Oh, yeah. And that was, I didn't know any better, and they were helping me along, and I didn't really get to work intimately with what they do, but I sat back and admired it. But mostly I was just trying to keep up. But that was Amy Poehler and Maya Rudolph and Kristen Wiig and Kenan Thompson and Bill Hader,
unbelievable.
Seth Meyers, Daryl Hammond, Fred Armisen, Andy Samberg. They were remarkable. Now Kenan is the only one of that group who is still with us, but I would place him on the top of my list. He is just. You were talking about Kate, and Kate is amazingly fluid and has a wide range, but Kenan does too, and Kenan brings something to every single role, no matter how tiny. He's committed to finding something in it that is clever. And
I agree. And he's been on the show such a long time.
the longest of anybody. Yeah.
What's up with that? I mean, I mean, it must be a really hard-paced job, and I would think after a period of time, there's only so long an actor can handle being in that role, or a comedian, right? That after so many years, wow.
You did that on purpose, saying "What up with that," right?
I did. I
Okay, all right. I got it. That was, that was great.
Thank you, Tom. I
Great.
appreciate you acknowledging that. Thank you.
Keenan's had several opportunities to move on, and I believe he's doing his own show now, or plans for his own show that would not take him out of the cast. He'd still be able to do Saturday Night Live, and of course, he started as a child actor and had and I'm surprised that he wasn't turned into the next Eddie Murphy or had a major movie career. But all I know is that I love that he's still around, and I love working with him. And he and Kate, and the third person who doesn't get the recognition she deserves is Cecily Strong. Cecily has got the right last name because she is strong, and she is she is fearless, and will jump into characters and commit so fully to them.
I think the last year or two of her characters have really grown. I think she's shown that how strong she really is, and we've seen it in the last like 3 episodes that were at home, and maybe we can go there a little bit, Don.
Sure.
About it. How did that come about? I know you didn't direct them, but how did they come about?
When it was decided that we couldn't finish our season, we shut down the studio operation, and I got a phone call from the production manager saying Lauren wants to try to do one show as a remote. Every cast member is going to be asked to come up with something. The writers are going to be asked to write something that can be done as Zoom sketches or single pieces or split screens. And I said, okay, where should I be? He said, you stay where you are. They know how to do it. And all of those cast members, especially the young ones, came up in the online world of doing their own videos and creating their own material, and the writers too. And I sat in on the first read through on a Zoom call like this and said, "Oh man, that stuff is ambitious, but maybe they can make it work. I don't see how." But they turned it over to brilliant editors who, again, individually at their own little operations, put together stuff that was. I sat there the first show and said, "Boy, that's Saturday Night Live." There's some weak things in there and some sloppy things in there, but in general, it was just as topical and just as funny, and I was impressed. 2 weeks later, I did another one. It was even better in the production elements and production values. It increased immensely. I had sent out some notes about miking and about lighting and about camera framing, but nothing that affected what they did, other than to give them some hints that they were thinking about themselves. And the third show was even better still. And I was impressed, and I sent them an email saying I have never been more proud of a show I had nothing to do with. And so it made me think that about the question I get a lot is, when can we go back to the way we used to do things? And it made me think, well, maybe the question should be, how can we use what we've learned in this period of time to do things in a different way, or do things in a better way, or do things in a parallel way? And I thought, I'll bet 80 years ago, when television was first created, when they were sitting around a big room saying, how can we do this? A lot of people said, yeah, we can't tell stories in black and white and the tiny little fuzzy characters on a little square box. There'll be no band, no audience. You can't tell stories that way. Certainly nothing like you do in a live theater, nothing like you do in a big screen in a movie house. We can't make it work. But fortunately, there were enough artists and enough pioneers who said, "Hey, let's give it a shot. Let's see what we can do. Let's make a hat where there was no hat." And 80 years later, we've got a medium that is different from live theater. It's different from movies, but it's just as viable and just as moving and just as important in the soulful way that stories are told. And so I think that there may be a way to use the skill set that we've been forced into honing in the past couple of months to continue to tell stories in a different way.
And like you said, there's some cast members that in fact already have that background. SNL in the past, if you take a look at the animation that SNL's done, or the
Yes.
amazing videos SNL's
Yes.
done, even music videos that have become even more popular.
Yes.
Those become 3 different pieces that have been added to this format. So it really has moved into more of a hybrid format anyway. So it does feel like there's a natural progression, and that SNL kind of brings on whatever the modern thing is of that era and just brings it in, which is maybe part of Lauren's leadership and that longevity, secret that we've been talking about.
You are absolutely right. He in many ways is conservative in that many things stay the same. He doesn't want to break the mold of the way things always are, but at the same time, he's willing to stick his neck out and attack the most recent events in different ways. And if somebody comes to him with a different way of telling that story, he says, give it a shot. And it is, Lauren. And it's another reason why the show is still on the air. I agree. And by the way, those digital shorts and those music videos that we do, those are done in the exact same 3-day period. Those things are read for the first time that Wednesday.
Oh my gosh.
And crews on their own, totally separate from my operation, go out and create those little movies from scratch. I don't see them until we play them back in dress rehearsal. I say, oh, wow, where did they get that scenery? Or there's a special effect there. I wouldn't know how to do that if I had weeks. But it's another group of brilliant people who do
It's remarkable, actually. It's remarkable. In terms of getting feedback, I'm sure that, I don't know how much of it you ever really listen to, but in your episodes that you've directed, have there been episodes that got like the most positive, like one of the most positive feedback shows, like after maybe a national tragedy or something that happened in New York,
yes.
Response from that? And is there one that you got a lot of negative responses? People did not like
it. The most glaring is a time when Pete Davidson on Weekend Update made reference to a congressman who, a Republican congressman whose name escapes me, who had lost an eye in Iraq, I believe, and Pete sort of ad-libbed of, yeah, okay, so he's a war hero, yeah, and he tried to throw it off in an awkward moment, and there was really strong negative feedback to his having done that, and it was sort of a passing ad-lib, and it was unfortunate, and I think Pete felt bad about it, and but it was the worst press we've gotten in my time. And I got some personal people came out of my past and my woodwork to complain to me and to chastise me for being a part of something so cruel and so offensive.
Oh.
And I understood that, and I wrote a note back to all of them saying, hey, I understand how you feel, and I agree that it was offensive, but please remember that Pete ad-libbed that. Pete's dad died in 9/11. He was a firefighter. He certainly understands service, and he regrets having done it. And so I have great respect for service and certainly for that ex serviceman. But then the very next week, Lauren convinced or asked that congressman to come on the air and to sort of make fun of Pete in a similar way. And it was another sign of how healing we can be. It wasn't just to cover our own back, but to just give him a chance to say, hey, here's the guy that made fun of you. Feel free. And he did, and he and Pete were funny
great.
together, and it was just a brilliant moment.
Great. That's great.
That's the worst I've got.
How about the best? Let's start with the positive. What's like the one you got the best feedback on? Would it have been the 40th anniversary? I mean, the 40th show, or?
I would say, well, this is a story that leads to a little clip I'd like to show.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, as I said before, I love working with hosts, especially the ones who've never done it before. But deep down inside, I love it most when an ex-host who's done it before comes back. Even better when an ex-cast member comes back. Because unlike Lorne, I kind of like to coast a little bit. And we think, oh, all right, this will be a lot easier week. And I wouldn't tell Lorne that, but I don't, like most people, I don't mind coasting. Well, in 2017, Jimmy Fallon hosted, and he's great at it. Not only was a cast member, he's a host, and he knows what it's about. He had hosted before. He knows how much harder it is to host than to be a cast member. And I thought, man, I'm not going to say this out loud, but I think we're going to coast this week. And sure enough, that Monday meeting was over in 15 minutes. The Wednesday read-through we ended an hour and a half early. Lorne had picked the sketches that we wanted to mount by 8 instead of by 10. We came in Thursday, and every single sketch we rehearsed on Thursday went fast and smooth. And I'd say, I asked Jimmy if he wants to do that again. I'm fine with the cameras. And immediately the response would be, Jimmy's fine. Let's move on. We went home at 7 o'clock on Thursday. That never happens. I thought, whoa, this is a great week, and I am coasting. Well, come in Friday. Now we're doing the more difficult sketches, and the first 4 that we did, again, we moved right through them. No problems with props or scenery or any special effects. And usually the monologue and or the cold open are the last things that get written and the last things we rehearse on Friday. And so throughout Friday, I would turn to the back row of producers and writers and say, anybody know what the monologue is going to be? And they kept saying, no, Warren hasn't decided yet. I'm hoping they're going to say, oh, Jimmy's just going to do a monologue like he does on the Tonight Show. It's just stand-up jokes. Because when we have a stand-up comedian, that's frequently what he or she does, just their own material, and it's just a single camera, and I can just stay on that single camera for a whole 5-6 minutes, and I can be working on my script for the changes that are in the next sketches coming up. So I'm hoping they're going to say monologue, and the monologue is going to be just a stand-up material. And finally, about 3:30, one of the producers yelled out, "Hey, Don, one just called. We know what the monologue is going to be. It's going to be a walk around." Well, I cringed a little bit. A walk around is when the host leaves home base and walks down through the audience, and often goes out into the hallway and does something out in the hallway. And it's a lot trickier to do because number one, you have to light the hallway differently. Number two, the miking has to be different. You got to make sure that he can hear out in the hallway. And number three, I always use a steady cam when we go out in the hallway. And a steady cam is a camera that's mounted on a gyroscopic shoulder mount. It's a big, heavy device that sort of floats, so it doesn't bounce with a camera operator. It sort of floats as the camera operator walks backwards or forward. And so I ordered a Steadicam operator to come in to do it. And I told everybody what else was involved. And about an hour later, the producer said, "Oh, it's going to be musical." Oh, I winced again, because musical means that he's got to be able to hear the band no matter where he is in the hallway, no matter what the route's going to be for his walking around. And that's just trickier for audio, and it's trickier for coordination and keeping everything in sync. I said, okay, all right, we'll take care of that. And I passed that information on to the audio people. We know it's going to be a musical walk around. Then he said, and they're going to be dancers. Oh man, I hate that. I really hate that because as he comes off the stage and down through the audience and walks underneath the bleachers, it's a very tight area where the stagehands stand to get out into the hallway where the page desk is, and for the bigger area of the hallway. And I said, and just choreographing dancers through that area, they're just too tight to get them through that area and get them to open up. Then after we get out, I said, all right, who's this choreographer? Found out they're bringing in a choreographer that had never done the show before, some Broadway woman, a big time choreographer. Our regular choreographer was out on the West Coast shooting something else. So that was going to be a nightmare too. I said, well, please just make it no more than 4 dancers who just can't get through that area. And he said, no. Here's Lauren's idea. When Jimmy comes down off the stage, he's going to go to that right between all the people who are on the floor, the floor audience we have down there, and they're going to look like regular audience. But Jimmy's going to say, "Come on, guys, we're having a party," and the whole audience is going to stand up and fill in behind Jimmy. Of course, they won't be real audience; they will be dancers, but they're going to dance in behind him all the way out to the page desk. I said, "You mean straight through underneath the tunnel?" He said, "Oh yeah, oh, and you know the stagehands or the stagehand stand. Those stagehands will be there, but they'll really be dancers, and those dancers will join in with all of the audience to come in behind Jimmy all the way out to the page desk. Oh, and the pages, they'll be dressed as pages, but they'll really be dancers, and they'll kind of spin off the desk and come in and join the whole group. Then coming out of the other side of the set will be the musical guest, Harry Styles. He's going to just join with Jimmy, and he's going to sing with Jimmy down the hallway, get about halfway down the hallway. I said, wait a minute, we've never gone that far. I'm not sure that we can light it that far. I'm not sure that we can hear the band that far. He said, well, that's okay, because right just past that area, the next set of doors, Harry's going to leave, and then cast members are going to come out from both sides of the hallway, the other entrances into the hallway, and they're going to crisscross in front of Jimmy all the way down to the elevator bank. I ordered a second Steadicam. I said, we've never gone that far. It's about 100 yards to go all the way down to that elevator bank. I said, then what? So when he gets down to down to the camera at the end of the hallway, he's going to turn the camera around and back the camera in as he goes over into the elevator bank, which will be filled with dancers. I said, oh my God, you realize that this show is live. You realize this show's on tomorrow night, and we haven't even started to rehearse this, block it, or think it through. Or I said, so it's going to end down there, right? He gets down to the elevator bank, and he's going to say, hey, we got a great show. We'll be right back. Stick with us. We'll be right back. He said, no. What he wants then is for Jimmy to sprint back down the hallway, the same way he came up, back down the hallway, all the way into the studio. In the studio, he's going to turn that camera around to reveal all of home base filled with the rest of the cast and dancers. Then confetti's going to fly down. And then he'll say, we'll be right back. I said, well, that means that the camera that picks him up, first of all, coming out of the studio, backs in, another camera picks him up down here at the end, turns around, sees the elevator bank, and then this camera's got to disappear as Jimmy starts to run back down the hallway. And now the camera that was up here has to run backwards as fast as Jimmy can run forwards all the way back into the studio. So yeah, that's kind of what he wants. Well, for the next couple of hours, we rehearsed it. I think we added more dancers. We got it down so that we at least had the logistics and the choreography fit and worked. And it was at the expense of a lot of other rehearsals, but we got the monologue down. We will go up to midnight to Lauren's office to see the rundown of the dress rehearsal that he's determined by that time. And the first thing he says is, I hate the way that hallway looks. And I'm thinking, how can you even see the hallway? It's filled with dancers. I didn't say that, but I thought that. He said, I want it to look like he's coming out of Studio 8H and walking into Studio 54. I wanted to have a disco look to it. Well, I look over the lighting director. I look over at the set designer, and they're both nodding. I think they're biting their tongues, but they're nodding as if they can turn that around from midnight to the next morning. Well, I went home and worked on my script and had it all blocked out. Came in the next morning, and that entire hallway had been transformed. All of the pictures that are along that hallway had been stripped. The monitors were gone. There were disco lights in the ceiling. The walls, the entire walls of that 100 yards were painted black with gold disco striping. There were floor lights along in the ground. There were fog machines. For those two departments transformed that hallway into a disco. Well, we rehearsed it along with the other 15 things we had to rehearse. We rehearsed it and got it down, and I think added a few more dancers and managed to get that on the air, kind of fulfilling Lorne's vision. And Dana, if you would play the clip for people, I'll show you how it ended up.
You did a great job with that.
Well, I would say that it was better than I thought it would be, but if it were up to me, that would have been Jimmy standing by himself telling jokes for 8 minutes. And because of Lorne Michaels, it was that big production number. Now, they gave me a Directors Guild Award and an Emmy for that show, and it was really earned by Lorne Michaels.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations. I think you deserve that. Well done. I wanted to ask you one last question. Because I was just curious earlier. You're only the fourth director in 45 years of Saturday Night Live. That's pretty impressive. How did you get the gig?
I backed into it. I was directing morning television for all of that time. At one point in my career, before the morning shows, I had done a show called America Alive at NBC. It was alive for about 8 months. It was sort of just a daytime version of one of the morning shows. And the man who had been my associate director in the control room went on to be the control room AD for Saturday Night Live for years and years and years. And in 2006, he called me up and said, you know, that Beth McCarthy, who's been directing the show for 10 years, is leaving. She adopted a child, and she just is burned out and had enough. And she told them back in the spring she was leaving. They brought in a lot of people to observe, but they really didn't find anybody. And I told them that I'd worked with you 20 years ago or more, and I thought you had the skill set. I said, well, Bob, that's really flattering, but the fact is, I've never directed sketch comedy, and I'm sure that's what they want. Of course, I've directed every kind of show you make fun of, and I've directed lots of live music. I've directed a lot of live television. I've directed a lot of live news. I can direct comedy news, but with the bulk of the show is working with actors and staging little one-act plays, and I've never done that before. And he said, well, just send in your reel. I said, I don't have a reel. I've never needed a reel, never sent it around to shop myself for jobs. He said, well, bring some stuff in here to Saturday Night Live. We'll put it together. So I took some old tapes of old shows I had done, and he put together this little reel. They showed it to the Steve Higgins and the other producers. And they said, yeah, let's meet. I had lunch with those guys, and it was terrific to hear them tell the stories about how this show comes together and how big a production it is, how much fun it was, how challenging it was. But it was clear that they wanted somebody who could direct sketch comedy. And so I walked out of that meeting saying, hey, I'm thrilled I got that far. It was great to hear those stories, but there's no chance that I can slide into that role. I took my daughter to Disney World. This is Labor Day now of 2006. And I get a call in Florida saying, Mr. Michaels wants to talk to you. Well, I'm in Florida. We're coming back tomorrow. Can you wait? He says, yeah, he can wait till Tuesday. And so Tuesday, I went in to meet him, walked into his office and sat down, and he clearly was unhappy that he had to make this decision, especially since the season was about to begin in 3 weeks. And they hadn't found anybody. And he spent most of that hour complaining about how he hated the way the things looked and how the production team screwed up the writer's vision, and he wasn't sure he wanted to continue with this after this break of loyalty. And I shook his hand and walked out, and I thought, well, it was great to get that far, all the way to Lorne Michaels' office. And they called the next day and said, hey, Kay, we're kind of desperate here. We'll take a chance on you if you want to come in and do the first 3 shows. And for the first time, I said, whoa, wait a minute. I'm really going to direct Saturday Night Live, the first 3 shows? I said, you know something, I'm not sure I want to try that. I mean, it would be a great opportunity, but I don't know that I can do it. And I'm just kind of comfortable in what I do. I've done 21 years of this. I'm well rewarded for it. It's challenging work. And I don't think I want to feel butterflies in my stomach again. I don't think I want to take the risk of failure. And I thought, man, that could be painful to be a loser at this point in my career. But then I thought, there's no worse emotion than regret. Oh man, I wish I'd tried that, or what if maybe I could have done it. I thought, hey, I can always come back to this kind of work. I can always do the thing I'm good at. Let me give it a shot. And I took that risk and I stuck my neck out, and it was a giant production mountain to climb. It was the steepest learning curve I've ever been on.
Wow.
But I am so glad I did. It's by far the best job I've ever had, the most challenging, the most rewarding, and I'm thrilled that I took that risk.
Oh, Don, you're a mensch. I don't know if you know that word, mensch. You're in New York. You should.
I do.
You are a
yeah.
mensch. You really are a good guy. And I want to thank Lana Smith for introducing us and for making this happen. Thank you, Lana. But really, your heart is there, and it's obvious that you can deal with a lot of egos because you don't bring that to the table. You're obviously someone who was called to do this and to tell the stories. And thank you for telling the stories. Please keep doing it, Don. You're very young. So keep doing this. We need SNL. So please let the cast know when you have the opportunity, and the entire staff of SNL, that the little city of San Jose has a synagogue and a bunch of people that have in part gotten through COVID-19 from their work, but also through so many horrible things that have happened in this country over the years. SNL has had a positive response that brought our spirits up, while at the same time making it something that was important and special and not making light of it. And to me, that really says something about you and the entire staff that you work with. But thank you, Don, so much for spending time with us today. It means a lot.
Well, that means more to me than you know. And Dana, let me know when you're ready to come in and audition for us.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you all.
Take care. Great being with you, Don. Thanks again.